Yes. So I'm here to talk today about how a network of scientists from all over the world, we have some here in Berlin as well, are using web annotation in an attempt to improve the accuracy of media coverage of climate-related news and climate change. I'm Daniel Nethery. I'm the Associate Editor of the project. It's actually being founded by Emmanuel Vincent, who couldn't be here today. He's over in the west coast of the US at the moment. And I know that he developed this in collaboration with Dan, who I think has now arrived. The project's now about a year old, and I'll get to what we've done over that time in a bit. But you can see here that there's a picture here of a nice, nasty-looking cyclone. And Emmanuel's actually got a background in climate science, and particularly in work relating to cyclones. And climate feedback was born when he was doing his postdoctoral work, and he thought, well, what's the point of doing this research if everything that we're doing is not being transferred properly to the public, and the public are misinformed about what the facts are of climate change? So we all know that there's news about climate change every day. There are hundreds and thousands of headlines that hit the papers. Some of them are read more than others, of course. Some are more sensational than others. And this sort of picture here brings me back to the image that we saw in the slide in the presentation we've just seen about all those arrows of information that are coming towards people who are looking at newspapers. And the question is, well, how do you know what to trust? I'm from Australia. Just in February this year, we had a news report on climate in one of the major Australian newspapers. And when the scientists actually got around to evaluating that, they proved that it was misleading. But of course, this is in a major Australian newspaper. As an Australian, I may know that this newspaper perhaps has a certain bias when it comes to reporting climate-related issues. But if you're, say, someone from Asia who reads the Australian newspapers and you're not aware of this, and you see this is in a highly respectable, well-established news outlet, how would you know whether it's something you can trust? So this is what climate feedback is about. And I guess the other major fact is that there's a lot of confusion in the public, in the public's minds as to what the facts of climate change are. If we just take the American public here as an example, there's a certain percentage, I'll let you have a think about what that might be, who are not sure whether scientists agree on whether global warming is actually happening or not. Now, does anyone want to hazard a guess as to what that percentage might be? Any takers? How much? 55? I think you're a little bit high, although you'll probably find a study which confirms your answer. But the number that we've got is 40%. That's just on the number of people who don't think that scientists agree on the facts. The proportion who don't believe in global warming is actually higher. It's more around about 50%. And of course, we observe this across a number of areas in science, vaccinations, one which comes to mind. But climate change is something which seems to be particularly relevant at the moment, and particularly with the Paris Accord and trying to generate popular support for measures which might go to mitigate global warming. We think that this is the issue which we need to attack. So the question is, how can scientists respond to this gap between what the public thinks scientists think and what scientists actually do think? The first column there, if you like, is what's been happening now for, over 20 years. And that's scientists just giving direct policy advice to policymakers. The IPCC is obviously the most high-profile organised way that this occurs, although, of course, individual scientists also do this on a regular basis. But this doesn't, of course, have any interaction with the public. It means the media can run off and do their own thing, and we're seeing we've come to a stalemate in this case. I mean, and it's particularly intense in Australia at the moment. And if you don't bring the public along with you, well, then you can get situations where governments can decide to ignore the advice and do their own thing. So then more and more scientists have been engaging in outreach. This is very time-consuming, but they, of course, do it. several ways that you could do this. Many scientists maintain their own blogs. There are some who are now doing courses online that are open to anyone who is interested. Of course, there are also more high-profile scientists who get involved in op-ed exchanges. So when someone publishes an article which is misleading, they point that out. But these methods are all, again, extremely time-consuming for scientists, and it's not clear what the effectiveness of them is. Certainly, if we take the statistic we saw in the previous slide, you'd have to say that the effectiveness of these has not been that great, and people's time is limited, and of course you want scientists to be doing what they do best, which is research. So the third approach, and this is what climate feedback is really trying to zero in on, is to improve media accuracy itself. So you have a group of scientists who then make sure that what the media are reporting is what scientists are actually saying. And then this then has the potential to reach a much larger audience and generate that democratic will for the sort of policies which the scientists say we should be implementing. So climate feedback brings together an international network of scientists. There are currently 100. We're growing a year on. And they're doing collective reviews, we call them feedbacks because that's a term from climate science itself, of influential online content. It's usually journalism, but of course, last year when the Pope released an encyclical on climate change, we analysed that as well. And the goal is to ensure that when people report science, that's actually consistent with the science itself. And when we come to a couple of the cases I'll talk about, you'll see that that's not a given. Now, the point of the conference here, of course, is how we do this, and this is a use case of hypothesis of web annotation. So this is actually an integral part of how we're going about trying to make the best use of scientists' time. We pick a target article based on a number of criteria. It's potential for potential impact. There have to be verifiable facts in the article. We can't base ideological opinion if there are no scientific claims. And then we send it out. We alert scientists who have expertise in the particular areas of which the article is making claims about, and we get them to annotate. And so they come along and they use hypothesis and go through and mark up the article, and then they do this collaboratively, and then independently they assess the article for its scientific accuracy. So why is web annotation so important to this? I don't think I need to explain to this audience that there's the context and the transparency. There's the two obvious features of web annotation. Although, of course, these are very important for the scientists themselves, because we often see, even in some of the evaluations that we've done, that scientists will be interviewed about, say, some research that they've released or an edited journal, special issue of a journal, and those their comments will be taken out of context. So when scientists go and edit using web annotation a journal article, they know that what they're saying then can't be taken out of context. It's actually glued to the article. And the transparency, of course, is important for us for two reasons. First of all, because it means that our approach is transparent. People can actually go and read for themselves what the scientists have said. But also, of course, for the scientists, it's about communication. The fact that anyone can go in to the article, and if they want to dig deeper, they can actually go and look at what scientists have said about that article, is something very important. But probably the most important aspect of the web annotation process is that it's highly efficient. These are collaborative reviews. We generally get about 10 scientists who will go and look at a target article. And this is not peer review. This is not sending out an entire article to two people and having them go through all of the content. With a collaborative review, you can get people who have expertise in different areas, and they just zero in on exactly what they know. They have that information at their fingertips. They know the latest research. They can put up a graph or a chart or a link to the latest paper, and that means that they can also then see what others have done before them, and so it makes the best use of their time. And this is a nice quote from one of our network members, Dr. Twyla Moon, who's a cryoscientist or an ice scientist. Cryo sort of always sounds a little bit scary to me, but at the University of Bristol, who just says that, I feel that climate feedback is a really efficient and effective use of scientists' time. I can choose to spend very little time on an article and just comment on one or two things, or I can spend more time and make longer explanations. So you can see that the web annotation thing, it's actually allowing the scientists who are often very busy. At the end of the day, they see an article from us, they see an email from us which comes out, it's on their area, and rather than going and writing up an op-ed, which takes a lot of time, they can just zero in on one or two comments and say, bang, bang, this is what I know, this is accurate, or no, it's not accurate for this reason. And the last thing about web annotation, which is going to become increasingly important for our project as we scale up, is, of course, that we're leaving an annotation trail. So we've got a sort of a traceable track record of different media outlets that we're looking at. And we're looking to use that as we move forward. So to date, over the past year, we've carried out 27 feedbacks. 13 of them have led to positive scores. Scientists think that the article makes a very good effort at presenting the science. 13 of them have led to negative scores, and one of them was debated. That's an interesting case study. I won't go into it too much, but basically what we discovered there was that the journalist had done a very good job, but the editors had framed the article in a misleading way. And that then led to a conversation with the editors, and they agreed to actually reinstate a lot of the links that the journalists had collected to source material. So you can see here that this process is actually opening up a new conversation between scientists and journalists, but also editors. We're bringing along editors as well in the process. What we're looking to do is to scale up and to aggregate our feedbacks. And this is where the web annotation is extremely important for us. It means that we can scale up fairly effortlessly. And to do this, then we're looking to track the credibility of the media outlets. So we're calling this a scientific trust tracker. Of course, at the moment, with only 27 feedbacks, we can't actually make particularly strong claims about the credibility of what particular media outlets is. But you can see, for example, that in the evaluations that we've done to date, so the New York Times has come out quite well. There have been 23 reviewers in the 3 articles that we've evaluated. There are 40 annotations that people can go and look into if they're interested. And generally, the sort of keywords that emerge in the evaluations of these articles are that they're insightful, accurate and unbiased. The one above, which I've sort of cut off the screen there, is Mashable. That's also another source which we're finding is producing good content. But something like the Wall Street Journal has more questionable outcomes, and something which we'd like to explore further. So what are the benefits of all of this? Well, the idea of aggregating all these scores into the trust tracker is that readers will get a very easy to use, reliable reference on what good sources of information on climate change are. They can also, of course, delve into the annotations themselves and actually see what scientists have said. I can certainly imagine a lot of school kids with their next climate science project doing that. But generally, we also want to make it as easy as possible for the public, just to know, yes, when there's a new breaking story in, say, the Wall Street Journal, you should maybe be sceptical about it until you've heard more. For scientists, by aggregating these scores over time, we're actually hoping to put them ahead of the curve. And when I say that, I think maybe an analogy from public health is appropriate. Up until now, we've been responding to articles. An article goes online, and we then, as short a turnaround as possible, it's usually 2 or 3 days, publish a response to that. But as we build up this trust tracker over time, we're actually hoping that we're going to provide a real incentive for journalists who actually go and put in the time and effort to get ahead. We're actually trying to, for the first time, create an incentive for editors to support good quality scientific journalism. At the moment, it's not clear that that's at all the case, and we carried out a sort of a mini series of evaluations on Forbes magazine last year. There were 4 evaluations in total. We found that one of them was quite good, but it was actually swamped in terms of readership by one in particular, which attracted almost 1 million hits, and it was deeply misleading. The report on the science was just not at all what it was. And we're hoping then that we can then move the public on to action, that they'll actually realise that scientists do agree on this, and that we'll get something there. So the point is that web annotation for us is going to serve as a memory for what media outlets are doing. Just a pitch to finish off. Please get involved. You can sign up for our newsletter at the website, follow us on social media, and just a pitch as well, we're currently running a crowdfunding campaign to help us scale up. So if you'd like to support us, we're at 80% and we've got 1 week to go. So any support there would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Questions for Daniel and climate feedback?
Thank you for your presentation. My question is a simple one. Just how do you get the annotations to the readers, to the public? How do you attract the public's eye in this case?
Yeah, that's a good question. To be perfectly frank, we know that a lot of readers don't actually go into the annotation level of the articles. We take the annotations and the overall responses of the scientists, which they actually do independently, and make a sort of an easy-to-read score that we then put on a website, push to social media, that then contains the links that will take readers into the Hypothesis layer, which they can then use to access the annotations. But we did notice that people aren't necessarily going there, so we're also bringing some of the more meatier annotations up onto the website to try and give them a higher profile. It's really to try and put the scientists in the forefront. Thanks for the question.
Have you had any journalists come to you prior to publishing an article and asking for a review?
We have actually, yes. And it was in the case of that, the one where the scientists couldn't actually determine whether they thought that it was a positive or a negative score. That journalist actually approached us and wanted us to verify his work. He saw that obviously as a stamp of approval which he was trying to attract. And it's funny because when you present those results, you have 13 plus 13 equals 27. There's that one missing. But it was actually one of the most interesting evaluations we've done. Scientists were actually able to engage with the journalist, who is well known, has a lot of credibility. And then he was then able to pass on their comments to the editors and say, well, look, the way you framed this article with the headline, so that some of the captions was actually not truly reflective of what the message of the article was. So there are new interactions going on there.
Hi, can you talk a little bit about how you engage the scientists and what proportion of the climate science field is engaged with this, or is it the senior scientists, or is it the students, or can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there are criteria that people need to satisfy in order to join the network. They need to have a PhD in a related discipline, and they need to be actively publishing. That means they need to have produced as a lead author at least one article in the last couple of years. But one of the advantages of this approach is that when you think back to that original slide about scientific outreach is usually only carried out by very high-profile scientists. They're professors, they're well-established, they've got access to media outlets. This is actually allowing scientists at all career levels, early career researchers, scientists who generally may not interact with the media because they're aware that there are pitfalls. It's allowing them all to come together. So I'm not actually certain on the statistics, but certainly some of our most active annotators are early career researchers. And it's not that they're any less able to do it, but this is really allowing them to come and get some valuable media experience and contribute what they know. Yeah, no, it's a good question. Thank you. I should have pointed that out.
Thanks, Daniel. We're going to have to go to the next one, but he's going to be around all day.